Okay, now I guess round two, what it is to actually look at the peripheral vision, even if you want to call it damage in some respect, is to take my psychology on seriously. Let's say, for example, what I'm about to share with you might not be so readily indecisive by those who, I guess, contrary to public opinion and global notoriety, might see, I guess, the greater access terminal or the terminological experience in which you're likely to have. People will concentrate too much verifiably in this life about what they have rather than what they forever step into. People are constantly at a crossthread. Every time they deal with something, I suppose it's a bit like the way in which the five senses play havoc on human life. We've just, like with God, been given like 5 holes punched into our head and slow fed oxygen to ensure some kind of reciprocation of sorts, because like every individual born example of human life, we take what we have and we concentrate so readily on it, and contrary to the opinion of those who, like most who actually don't sought after the material of the opinion, you find yourself a bit, I guess, erupted in a sense to the proposition, or the preposition should I say, of terms and conditions, or the terms and policies of life. If humans, like young kids, if you can get away with stuff, you'll do it. Kids want to drive their cars on the streets at the age of 12. Kids want to ride their bikes on the streets. Kids want to play with fires. They want to use lighters. They want to play with cherry bombs. Kids like to do everything. So just like adults being some sort of mature child, which with much more experience as the years progress in successive outlay, to be able to fine line the pros and cons and the tricks of the trade and the odds and the ends and any sort of willful approach, because again, this is where we'll probably start this ministry today, about, I guess, the willful conduct of a life form like humans, so vastly misunderstood by everyone, to be very much concept/resource poor. You're born into a world that doesn't understand concept. Therefore, you rely solely on education in order to get you there. But then you see, humans are not just so willing to do anything. In fact, what it is, the difference between being willing and yet willful. Humans, above all things, are willful. And we are desperately wicked. And that's how the human brain works. It's the corruption of human thinking, our human premise. Our brain is a very highly corruptible, manipulative thing. And so humans have a weary dominating factor in that regard. We dominate. And we tend to dominate the hasten weary effect, where just like a sort of a bug-bearing effect has an agitation and an irritation, like the way in which the world just sort of bugs out. It's exactly the same. You need to wear that willful title of domination. You are willful in order to empower your way to the title and the chess pin. You don't mind being willful if it means you get to play the male dominant monkey motherfucker. But then when it comes to the willingness, humans are not just so willing because you don't necessarily seem to have anything in which to add on. It decimates the concept. The concept in which, like born into a world without it, has to gather it like hunters and gatherers. So when you do finally somehow sort of present or demonstrate not just affiliation or congregation, in short, unless you can successfully congressionalize yourself within any sort of area of society, the world, whether it be industry, society, the community, any corridor that requires affiliation and association, you will somehow, I guess, only have to, in a sort of a much more desperate manner, latch on or clutch and pedal through life like a crutch. My proverb or my phrase, which says, once clutch, it becomes one's crutch. And people draw back on their karmas. It's like saying, like a clutch mechanism or a clutch situation, like in a basketball game. It becomes one's crutch, just like the main man, in which you've got to be able to pass the ball to. You're not paid enough. So it all gets put on that gentleman, like a LeBron James or a Michael Jordan. And like thus, the overriding factor, people do draw back on their karmas. Because apart from yourself, you can do nothing. So you're not just so willing. If the world had any real power and was willing to do so, this world would have solved itself by now. But because of that willful approach, the willfulness of human beings, above all things, we are not the animal kind. We are mankind. We're above all things. We're willful above all things and desperately wicked. We find ourselves in a cross thread where, like that willfulness in which to take on the verifiable estimates and outcomes for mankind's sake, we fail the use of denomination. We actually forfeiture our race against time. And just like a race of any sort, or any race in which to be able to perfectly convey the truth, or perfectly convey lifestyles, or convey ordinances, in which, just like the associations and the delegations and the collegian ranks or whatever, those given the sort of the power, or those fields in which to have and safeguard, the maturity through omissive detail or dialected omissions so let's say fortify the outcomes, right? You become illegitimate to the means or to the basis of conformity, like the average, which you'd like to tend to think that it was much more congruent and prevalent throughout, like the world, to be willing in order to solve that great challenge. If the world itself and the earth and the compromise of the environment and the planet and the political framework in which spells out the pathway for humanity from any vantage point to the next, be it the lower class or the upper class, the world's never going to solve itself, as big as a challenge as it is, unless you first change human beings, individual human beings, because humans themselves are a great big challenge. And it's a great big mystified realm of what it takes willingly to open up and generously, involve them, like it is all about them in some case. As if to involve people / implicate them in anything, like the great big stories that we wake up to every day, and it very much affects us, as much as affects us, cause and effect, I guess, there would be much more of a excuse me. Yes.